The FISA court back in the news. Some of those powers going to be expiring soon. And the DOJ, Merrick Garland, FBI, Department of Justice, all the different agencies involved do not want to lose that power. It expires December 2023. It's coming up hot. The Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, and Attorney General Merrick Garland sent a letter over to Congress. They're saying, please, we need Section 702 so that we can continue to investigate terrorism and bring, the bad guys to justice. Unfortunately, according to people like Thomas Massie, people like Darin, LaHood, and other entities like the ACLU, 702 is not just used for terrorists, okay? This is something that's used to spy on Americans and commandeer, undermine your constitutional rights at every turn. And so let's turn our attention to get our bearing straight on this over to Matthew Olsen. You may remember Matthew Olsen from other segments here on this channel where he was talking about homegrown domestic violent extremism. He was hanging out with Jill Sanborn over at the FBI. Well, today he was in front of the Brookings Institute and he was talking about FISA. And FISA is set to expire very soon, and they very much do not want that to happen because they're going to lose the ability to go, I guess, catch all those insurrectionists and governor kidnappers.
So look, as many of you know, the National Security Division, which I lead at the Justice Department, was created in the wake of 9/11.
Unfortunately.
It was created to unify all of the Department of Justice's national security efforts. We investigate spies and terrorists. We go after nation-state threats, those who would bring malign foreign influence to the United States. We enforce sanctions and export control laws and much more. But the National Security Division is also responsible for the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. We are the lawyers who represent the government before the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, or FISA court, and we oversee the use of FISA authorities. I've been on this job leading the National Security Division for just about a year. And I've worked in the national security field, as we just heard from Camille, for much of my career. People often ask me, what keeps me up at night? And that's usually a hard question to answer.
Here it comes.
We have so many threats that we face.
Governor kidnappers that were conducted by the FBI, fake insurrections that were conducted by the FBI, other things that were conducted by the FBI. There's so many to choose from. We can't keep track of it all. What is going to keep you up at night? What could it possibly be there, Matthew?
From nation-state adversaries, terrorists, malicious cyber actors. It's hard to pinpoint just one threat. But right now I can say,
what is it?
Without hesitation, the answer to that question. What keeps me up at night is thinking about what's going to happen if we do not renew Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act.
What?
This law will expire at the end of this year if Congress doesn't act to reauthorize it. And if 702 expires or is watered down,
what's going to happen?
The United States will lose absolutely critical insights that we need to protect the country.
Oh, you're kidding. So that means we got to get rid of this. Like 702 has to go like double time. All right. It should be the top priority.
Let me back up a little bit. Section 702 is the law that enables the United States government to obtain intelligence by targeting non-Americans who are overseas and who are using U.S.-based communication services. Its value simply cannot be overstated. Without 702, we will lose indispensable intelligence for our decision makers and our warfighters, as well as those of our allies. And we have no fallback authority. We have nothing to go back to.
Perfect.
That would even come close to making up for that loss.
Perfect.
So that's why this morning, the Attorney General and the Director of National Intelligence sent a letter urging Congress to swiftly reauthorize 702. And in that letter, they emphasize that there is simply no way to replicate 702's speed, agility, reliability, and influence.
We're going to read that letter in a minute.
Section 702 enables the United States to gain intelligence about our most pressing threats. Today, we are relentlessly focused on serious threats, such as the Chinese government's efforts to spy on us and to steal our sensitive technologies,
with their balloons,
Iran's sanctions evasions, North Korea's nuclear program, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Let me stress the threat we face from China in particular. At this moment, when China is ramping up its efforts to spy on Americans, we must not blind ourselves to that threat by allowing 702 to expire.
Yeah, well, China is working really hard to spy on you, America. And we need to spy on you just as hard as they are. So give us authority under Section 702. We don't want the Chinese to spy on you more than you don't want them to spy on you more than we are, right? I mean, kind of American are you? Okay, so that's what he says that 702 is. Keeps him up at night, right? He's, waking up at night. He's sleeping there. He's dreaming of sweet lullabies, arresting white supremacists, and suddenly the dreams take a turn for the worse. He wakes up at 702 because he's just so worried that it's going to be deleted off the books. Now, it's not all of that useful. If you turn our attention over to the ACLU, which I know is an agency that gets a lot of criticism. Sometimes they do get it right. They've put together a very nice synopsis on what this provision entails. They say that under Section 702, just so you know, okay, Matthew Graves came out and told us one thing, Matthew Olsen, and this guy, or now ACLU gives us the contrary opinion. They write, under 702, the U.S. government engages in mass warrantless surveillance of Americans and foreigners' phone calls, text messages, emails, and other electronic communications. Oh, okay. Well, that's not exactly what Mr. Olsen just told us it is. Information collected under the law without a warrant, can be used to prosecute and imprison people, even for crimes that have nothing to do with national security. Given our nation's history of abusing its surveillance authorities and the secrecy surrounding the program, we should be concerned that Section 702 is and will be used to disproportionately target disfavored groups, including political activists and journalists. Now, they wrote this. They said Section 702 is set to expire at the end of 2017, but the Trump administration wants Congress to make the law permanent. We oppose those efforts and call on Congress to reform the law or allow it to sunset. So they didn't make it permanent, obviously. They extended it again. And so now Biden needs to extend it again. And so they should update this because they're still blaming Trump for this thing. Now, Trump, all of them do it. They all extend this power. They're all excited about endless power, limitless control. They want the authority once they get it. They don't ever give it up. But they give us this summation. What is wrong with Section 702? Here's one summary. It allows warrantless surveillance of people inside and outside the U.S., okay? Although it's justified as a counterterrorism tool, in reality, it permits surveillance far beyond what is needed to protect national security. It allows the government to target foreigners abroad if it believes they possess, quote, foreign intelligence information, a term so broadly defined, it includes ordinary information about foreign affairs that has nothing to do with national security at all. This means it could target surveillance, including human rights defenders, journalists, whistleblowers, even business owners. It gobbles this data, stores it in databases for years, in some cases, indefinitely. Now, the law is not supposed to be targeting Americans, but it does. Once the government collects the data, the content is stored for years. FBI, CIA, NSA, they routinely search through this trove to get information. It could be used against you. You wouldn't even know about it. It examines bulk communications just flowing through all the different agencies. Through its upstream program, okay? The NSA has tapped directly into the internet backbone, the core infrastructure that carries everything. Emails, text messages, internet data between Americans and the rest of the world. The NSA uses devices it has installed on the internet backbone to continuously scan international internet traffic data in bulk, looking for communications with tens of thousands of targets. It's unprecedented form, real-time, suspicionless surveillance of Americans' communications. Now, while the NSA curtailed one controversial element of this in 2017, after repeated violations of court-ordered limits, it wants to bring it back. Now, the intelligence agencies have abused the hell out of this, as they always do. There's a practice called a love-int. Improperly used it to spy on their exes and monitor their spouses. A recent opinion from the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court revealed a significant number of other violations that raised Fourth Amendment concerns, none of it being properly disclosed. Right? So our corrupt intelligence agencies are using this corrupt law to spy on all of us. And you can read the rest of it. It's a rotten bill. It needs to go. They've been long extending it indefinitely. Now it's set to expire, and they're begging for it to come back. So let's take a look at the letter that has been sent over to Congress, begging them. Drafted February 28th, sent over to the Honorable, so-called Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell, Hakeem Jeffries, minority leader in the House, and Kevin McCarthy, majority leader of the House, Speaker of the House. We have the letter that is being drafted by Attorney General Merrick Garland and Avril Haines, Director of National Intelligence. Those are two big names, okay? We don't often see letters drafted by these people. We definitely don't regularly see them together. This is the Attorney General. This is the lead of the Department of Justice for the whole United States. Big agency. This is the Director of National Intelligence. I think she runs, she's the head of the conglomerate of 21 or so different intelligence agencies, whatever the number is. Big names. They signed this together. Whew. So they must really mean business. Let's see what they say. They're writing to everybody in Congress, both the Senate and the House. They say, all right, dear leaders, McConnell, Schumer, McCarthy, and Jeffries, as the 118th Congress begins, we urge you to promptly reauthorize a key foreign intelligence authority of the FISA Act before it expires at the end of the year. They say Title VII of FISA, in particular Section 702, has been a critical authority for the intelligence community and the DOJ since it passed in 2008. The authority, they say, allows the government to acquire foreign intelligence information from individual terrorists and weapons proliferators and hackers and other foreign intelligence targets located overseas who operate using U.S. electronic communication service providers. It also requires the IC and the DOJ to comply with, get this, laughable, robust privacy and civil liberty safeguards. Give me a break. Which are overseen by all three branches of government, which means nobody's overseeing anything. As the examples below demonstrate, the information acquired using Section 702 played a key role in keeping the United States safe and secure. So given all of this, we ask that this is your top legislative priority because this gives us unique and timely intelligence and we comply with all the civil liberties that we must. Here's what they tell us. Over the last 15 years, they say 702 has proven invaluable again and again. We've identified all sorts of problems, including issues with the PRC, with Russia, Iran, and Korea. First, they say 702 acquired information has been used to identify ransomware attacks on critical infrastructure. This information was gleaned to get sanctioned foreign adversaries to stop developing weapons of mass destruction. They've identified threats to U.S. troops and disrupted planned terrorist attacks, both home and abroad. And this is how they got Ayman al-Zawahiri in 2022, thanks to Section 702. It also resulted in the identification and the disruption of hostile foreign actors and their attempts to recruit spies in the U.S. And they've identified economic security risks that have been prevented from occurring. They say, it has become clear there is no way to replicate Section 702's speed, reliability, specificity, and insight. And so they say we need this badly. And because Section 702 can only be used to target non-individual, non-U.S. persons located outside the U.S., they say don't worry about anything, Congress. It cannot, they say, it cannot be used to collect against a foreign person overseas if the intended purpose is to target someone located in the United States. Okay, so that's good news. Whew, I feel much better now. So they're not going to just gobble up all this information because that's not what the law intends. Now, compliance with these strictures is subject to comprehensive oversight, including all three branches. There is a court that was put in place. We're going to hear about that court in a minute. There was an Article 3 court that got put in place to evaluate all of this stuff. We're going to let a congressman walk us through that in a minute. They say, we noticed, we want to put your office on notice. We stand ready to help you. Get this bill passed, baby. We're going to be offering briefings on 702, even at the classified level, on our specific operations. We encourage you, please reach out to us so we can get this thing passed. Sent to all of the chief leaders of both houses of Congress, Merrick Garland, Avril Haines, right? So they really, really want this thing to squeak its way through. Now, some people have issues with this. We've got two clips to attend to. One from Darin LaHood. He's a Republican out of Illinois. He talked about this about 1 year ago from today, March 2022, and he walks us through one of those court rulings, one of those opinions that Avril Haines and Merrick Garland said made sure that this whole thing was being run above board. They said, we have oversight over this. We have a whole court that monitors this stuff. Well, here's what one of those courts found.
Thank you, Mr. LaHood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank all of you for your commitment and dedication to the work that you do in service of our country. Director Array, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about FISA. As you're aware, Section 702 of FISA is scheduled to expire in December of 2023. And I think you know that the FBI's credibility with members of Congress when it comes to managing and executing this law is dubious at best.
Toilet in the garbage.
And I would say in a bipartisan way. Last year, as you know, OD&I declassified a FISA court opinion from here in the District of Columbia, and it was Judge Borsberg, as part of his judicial oversight, really just criticized extensively the FBI and the FISA process. And Mr. Chairman,
Yikes.
just for the record, I'd like to ask unanimous consent that the redacted opinion be made part of the record.
Without objection.
As you know, in that opinion, Judge Borsberg went through and detailed the FBI breaches, the illegal activity, the abuse of power, and the blatant failures of this process.
Yikes, that sounds
And
bad.
as you know, Director Ray, in the opinion, they specifically, the judge highlighted a dozen of FBI queries that were, quote, conducted in support of predicated criminal investigations that accessed Section 702 acquired information. This includes purely domestic activities like healthcare, fraud, bribery, and public corruption that were outside the norms of 702. Director Ray, was that appropriate conduct?
I think the judge's opinion speaks for itself that it was not. I would say that it's important that the court did not find unlawful purpose or bad faith or anything like that, but that doesn't make it any less unacceptable to me. I think the most important thing that I would call out here in this kind of setting, and we could obviously have a longer conversation, right, is that the queries at issue, the compliance incidents at issue involved there all predate massive changes that have been made by my leadership team and I since then, that include all sorts of changes to systems, to training, to safeguards, to policies. We created a whole new Office of Internal Audit that didn't exist before, that's solely focused on FISA compliance.
Yeah, don't change the law, okay? The law's fine. Everything about the law gives us everything we want. So we've just changed everything after the fact. You know, all of those violations that were, you know, technically not illegal, technically not bad faith, technically not anything that was criminal or outside of the bounds, right? The judge said totally inappropriate stuff. He says, yeah, but the law's okay. Like, we didn't break the law, right? Okay. So it's just a sort of a matter of, you don't like how I make the sandwich. I make my sandwich a little bit different than you make your sandwich. And so you want me to make it like you make it. That's fine. I'll change all of these different things around, and we'll put in some new training and procedures. And then you guys don't have to change the law. Then everything's going to be fine because of my leadership team at the FBI. Leadership at the FBI.
So I could go on and on about the changes that have been made, but all of those incidents predate all of those fixes. And I'm highly optimistic that those changes will dramatically improve our compliance rate. And you can bet that I am hell-bent on making sure that we do.
Okay, hell bent on it. That's FBI Director Christopher Wray. Very excited about that. Now, that was 1 year ago. This was also from Thomas Massie. This was, I believe, February 2023. So we fast forward 1 year ahead. Now, this is not Christopher Wray, but this is Thomas Massie explaining his thoughts now on 702.
Which, Mr. Baker, you've talked about in your testimony, particularly 702 parts of it that we are going to re-examine and reauthorize potentially. On the surface of it, it sounds like a practical legal concept that you would collect information on foreign targets who don't have constitutional rights, and you might incidentally collect information that pertains to U.S. citizens who do have constitutional rights. But because it was collected incidentally
Not a big deal.
and not in pursuit of that U.S. person, oh, we'll go look at this data, we'll put some policies and procedures, but the Constitution does not apply here because it was incidentally collected.
Yep.
Well, if the incidental collection were small enough, that might be a valid concept. The problem is we've collected millions of exabytes of data. When what you're collecting incidentally becomes the entire universe,
Wow.
I think you might need a warrant to go look at that information.
Yes.
And when the number of searches that is done on U.S. persons by the FBI, I'm not talking about CIA, NSA. We know in 2020 it was over 1 million searches into this phishing, into this database where you don't need a warrant. And then in 2021 it went from 1 million to over 3 million searches.
Holy.
This is problematic, and I hope we look at this going forward.
It's just a free-for-all. It's kids in a candy store. There's no oversight at all. How can Christopher Wray manage 3 million searches and figure that out at the FBI? They can't even finish their Where's Waldo coloring books there at the FBI Hoover building. So that, my friends, is what's going on. Now, they are going to be pounding the table hard to extend FISA. If we had to place our bets, Congress usually falls in line with whatever the intelligence community wants. I bet that they'd get this thing extended. Hopefully they don't, since they are now sending letters to our Congress people saying, please, please give us this additional authority one more time. Might be a good time if you have the letter writing fever to send one to your Congress people to encourage them to not extend it. But that, my friends, is it for the 702 stuff. We'll see what Congress does. Of course, we'll continue to cover. Thank you for liking this video and subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.